The battlefield stretched endlessly under the crimson sky of Zirion 7, littered with the twisted remains of starships and the broken bodies of a dozen different species. The Coalition forces had retreated 3 hours ago, leaving behind their dead and wounded in their desperate flight from the Vorthak invasion fleet. Among the debris and carnage, something massive stirred weakly in a crater that had once been a command bunker. The creature was unlike anything the galaxy had seen in warfare before. Standing nearly 4 meters tall when upright, its body was a fusion of organic muscle and cybernetic enhancement that gleamed dully in the alien sunlight. 6 powerful limbs ended in razor-sharp claws capable of tearing through battleship armor, while rows of energy cannons were seamlessly integrated along its spine. This was a Ketharan war beast, one of the most feared biological weapons in known space. The Catharans had engineered these creatures over millennia, blending their own genetic material with that of apex predators from across the galaxy. Each war beast represented decades of careful cultivation and neural conditioning, making them worth more than entire fleets to their creators. But this one lay dying. Dark blue blood pooling beneath its massive frame. Its breathing labored and irregular. Captain Sarah Chen of the human medical frigate Mercy's Hand watched the creature through her binoculars from their hidden position behind a collapsed comm tower. Her ship had arrived hours after the main battle, following standard human protocol for battlefield recovery operations. While other species typically focused on retrieving their own dead and wounded, humans had developed a reputation for attempting to save everyone, regardless of species or allegiance. Captain, the Coalition Command is ordering all remaining vessels to fall back to the Kepler system, reported Lieutenant Morrison, his voice tight with urgency. The Vorthak fleet will be back within 6 hours. We need to leave now. Chen lowered her binoculars, her jaw set in determination. Around her, the 23 members of her crew waited for orders. They were volunteers all, humans who had chosen the dangerous work of battlefield medicine in a galaxy where most species considered mercy a weakness. Her ship was small, barely armed, and completely outmatched by what was coming. "Ma'am, that thing down there," Sergeant Rodriguez gestured toward the warbeast. "It's killed thousands of our people. Coalition intelligence says each one of those creatures has taken down entire battalions. Why would we even consider helping it?" Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's chief medical officer, stepped forward. Her face was grim but resolute. "Because it's suffering, Sergeant, and because no one else will." She had spent the last hour studying the creature through long-range scanners, mapping its injuries and calculating what it would take to save its life. The war beast's wounds were catastrophic. Plasma burns covered 30% of its body. Several of its limbs were shattered, and internal scans showed massive organ damage. More critically, its cybernetic systems were failing, sending cascading errors through its nervous system that would lead to a slow, agonizing death over the next several hours. "The Ketharans abandoned it," Morrison observed, checking his tactical display. "Their own creators left it here to die. What does that tell you about this creature's value to them?" Chen considered this. In the 3 years since humanity had joined the Galactic Coalition, they had learned much about the various species and their military doctrines. The Ketharans were ruthlessly practical. They would only abandon a war beast if retrieving it was impossible, or if the creature was too damaged to be worth saving. Neither scenario spoke well for their chances of success. "Captain," came the voice of Ensign Park from the communications station. "I'm picking up multiple signals from that crater. The war beast isn't just injured. Its biomonitors are still transmitting. Whatever designed those systems expected someone to care about its welfare." This gave Chen pause. She had studied alien psychology extensively, and the Ketharans were known for their cold efficiency. They didn't waste resources on sentiment. If they had built monitoring systems into their war beasts, it suggested these creatures were more than just weapons. Perhaps they were individuals worthy of individual care. Dr. Vasquez was already preparing her equipment. "Captain, I've identified the primary issues. The creature's pain management systems have failed completely. It's experiencing agony that would kill most organic beings through shock alone. Its healing factors are trying to work, but they need time and proper medical support." The sound of shifting metal drew their attention back to the crater. The war beast had managed to lift its massive head, and for a moment, its 6 eyes fixed on their position. The intelligence Chen saw there was unmistakable. This wasn't just a weapon or a tool. This was a thinking, feeling being that understood its situation and knew it was going to die alone. "Ma'am, even if we could help it, the logistics are impossible," Lieutenant Morrison pressed. "That thing weighs at least 12 tons. Our medical bay wasn't designed for creatures that size. And even if we could get it aboard, how do we know it won't try to kill us the moment it recovers?" Rodriguez nodded in agreement. "The neural conditioning these things undergo is supposed to make them hate all non-Keitharan life. The moment it's conscious and mobile, we're dead." Chen found herself thinking about her younger brother Marcus, who had been killed defending a hospital ship during the Centauri incident. The attackers had been Keitharan war beasts, creatures exactly like the one dying in the crater below. By all logic, she should feel nothing but hatred for such beings. Instead, she found herself remembering Marcus's last words to her. "Sarah, never let fear make you forget who you are." "Dr. Vasquez, what would you need to stabilize the creature?" Chen asked quietly. The doctor's response was immediate, as if she had been planning for this possibility. "I'd need to set up a field medical station directly next to it. We don't have the equipment to move something that large, so we'd have to bring our entire medical suite down to the surface. The main challenge would be interfacing our human medical technology with Keitharan biosystems. How long would that take? To stabilize it enough for transport? At least 4 hours. To actually heal it enough to survive on its own? 12 to 14 hours minimum." The timeline was impossible. The Vorthak fleet would return long before they could complete treatment. Chen felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. Every rational calculation said they should leave immediately. Staying meant risking not just their own lives, but their ship and their mission to help other wounded beings across the sector. "Captain," Ensign Park spoke up hesitantly, "there's something else. I've been monitoring Keitharan communications channels. They're not completely abandoning this world. There's a small recovery ship about 18 hours out. They're coming back for their war beasts, including this one." This changed everything. If the Keitharans were planning a recovery mission, it meant they did value this creature's life. More importantly, it meant Chen and her crew weren't the war beast's only hope for survival. They could stabilize it, hide it from the returning Vorthak fleet, and trust that its own people would complete the rescue. But 18 hours was still far too long. The Vorthak would be back in 6 hours, and they wouldn't leave without thoroughly searching for survivors to eliminate. Any medical station they set up would be discovered and destroyed, along with anyone trying to defend it. Dr. Vasquez was studying her medical scanners intently. "Captain, there might be another option. The creature's cybernetic systems include an emergency stasis function. If I can repair enough of its biomonitors to trigger a proper stasis cycle, it could survive in hibernation for days or even weeks." "What would that require?" "I'd need to get close enough to directly interface with its neural implants. Very close. And the creature would need to remain conscious and cooperative during the procedure." Rodriguez laughed bitterly. "Cooperative? Captain, that thing was bred to kill. Even wounded. It's probably the most dangerous predator on this planet. You want our doctor to walk up to it and start performing surgery?" Chen looked again at the war beast in the crater. It had managed to prop itself up against a piece of twisted metal, and its breathing seemed slightly stronger. As she watched, it turned its massive head toward the sky, tracking the movement of the alien moons overhead. The gesture was so unexpectedly peaceful that it made her chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't name. "Ma'am," Morrison said more gently, "even if we ignore the danger, we have to consider our primary mission. There are confirmed human survivors in the Kepler system who need immediate medical attention. We could save a dozen human lives in the time it would take to help this one creature." It was a valid argument, and Chen knew it. The utilitarian calculus was clear. Abandon the alien war beast and focus on saving their own species. It was what every other species in the galaxy would do. It was what military protocol demanded. But humanity hadn't joined the Galactic Coalition to become just another pragmatic species focused only on their own survival. They had joined to bring something different to the galaxy, something that had been missing from interstellar civilization for too long. They had joined to prove that compassion could coexist with strength, that mercy was not weakness but the highest form of courage. Chen made her decision with the sudden clarity that sometimes comes in moments of moral crisis. She activated her ship's communications system, broadcasting on the standard Coalition emergency frequency. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Mercy's hand to any Coalition vessels in system. We are remaining on Zarian 7 to provide emergency medical assistance to wounded personnel. We will maintain radio silence until further notice to avoid detection by hostile forces." The announcement sent a ripple of shock through her crew. Morrison stepped forward, his face pale but determined. "Captain, I need to formally register my objection to this course of action. This is an unnecessary risk that violates our primary mission parameters." "Objection noted and logged, Lieutenant." Chen's voice was steady. "Dr. Vasquez, begin preparing your equipment. Sergeant Rodriguez, I want a defensive perimeter around the crater. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." As her crew moved to follow orders, Chen took one last look at the dying war beast. In 6 hours, the most powerful military force in this sector would return to finish what they had started. In 18 hours, if they were very lucky, Ketheron rescuers would arrive to find either a living creature in stasis or another body to add to the casualty reports. But for the next few hours, at least, the war beast would not die alone. Whatever else happened, Chen had decided that would have to be enough. Dr. Elena Vasquez approached the crater with careful, deliberate steps, her medical equipment floating behind her on anti-gravity platforms. The war beast tracked her movement with all 6 of its eyes, but made no aggressive moves. Up close, the creature was even more imposing than she had expected. Its wounds were horrific, yet there was an unmistakable dignity in how it held itself, even while dying. "Easy there," she whispered, more to calm her own nerves than to communicate with the alien creature. "I'm here to help." The war beast's response surprised everyone monitoring from their defensive positions. It slowly, painfully, lowered its massive head until it was resting on the ground, and then closed 4 of its 6 eyes. The gesture was universal across species: submission and trust. Sergeant Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system. "Doc, that thing just made itself vulnerable to you. In Kytheran combat doctrine, exposing the neck area is either a submission display or a trap. Be very careful." Vasquez was already running her scanners over the creature's cybernetic implants. The technology was far more sophisticated than anything in human medical databases. Biomechanical interfaces connected directly to the creature's nervous system, regulating everything from pain response to healing acceleration. Half of these systems were damaged or failing completely. "Captain, this is incredible," she reported while working. "The neural architecture here isn't just about combat enhancement. There are subsystems for emotional regulation, memory processing, even what looks like artistic appreciation. These war beasts aren't just weapons. They're full individuals with complex psychological needs." Chen's voice came back tense. "Doctor, we've got movement on the horizon. Vorthak scout ships. Still about 3 hours out. But they're definitely heading this way. How much time do you need?" Vasquez was elbow-deep in alien biotechnology, her hands moving carefully among circuits that pulsed with organic rhythms. "The stasis system is more complex than I thought. I need to not just trigger it, but calibrate it for long-term survival. If I get the settings wrong, the creature could suffer permanent brain damage or die in hibernation." The war beast suddenly shifted, causing Rodriguez to raise his weapon. But instead of attacking, the creature extended one of its less damaged limbs toward Vasquez. In its claws was a small, crystalline device that pulsed with soft blue light. It's trying to give me something," Vasquez said in wonder. She carefully accepted the device, and immediately her medical scanners began receiving data streams. "This is a medical history file. It's showing me its biological baselines, previous injuries, optimal stasis parameters. The creature is helping me help it." Lieutenant Morrison's voice cut through the moment. "Doctor, I'm reading massive power fluctuations in those neural implants. Whatever you're doing, it's putting enormous strain on the creature's systems. Vasquez could see what Morrison meant. The war beast was forcing its damaged cybernetics to interface with human technology. Despite the obvious pain this caused, sparks flew from several implant ports, and the creature's breathing became even more labored, but it maintained the connection, steadily feeding her the information she needed to save its life. Why? She asked aloud, looking into those alien eyes. Why are you trusting us? We're not your people. For all you know, we're enemies. The answer came not in words, but through the medical interface. Images flashed across her scanner's display. Human medical teams treating wounded coalition forces of all species. Human ships arriving first at disaster sites, regardless of the victims' allegiances. Human doctors working themselves to exhaustion to save lives they had never met before. The war beast had access to military intelligence networks. It knew humanity's reputation. More than that, it seemed to understand that these humans represented something unique in galactic civilization. They were willing to risk everything to save a single life, even when that life belonged to something designed to kill them. Captain, Vasquez called out. I've got the stasis parameters locked in. But there's a problem. The creature's cybernetic systems are too damaged to maintain hibernation on their own. Someone needs to stay here and monitor the stasis pod manually. If the power fluctuations get too severe, someone will need to make real-time adjustments, or the creature dies. The implications were clear. Staying behind to monitor the war beast meant certain capture or death when the Vorthak fleet arrived. It was a suicide mission with no guarantee of success. Chen's response came without hesitation. I'll stay. The rest of you get to the ship and prepare for immediate departure. Ma'am, respectfully, that's not happening, Rodriguez interjected. If you're staying, we're all staying. This crew doesn't abandon its captain. Doctor. Vasquez looked up from her work, her face streaked with sweat and alien blood. There might be another way. Captain, the creature's neural patterns are far more sophisticated than we realized. It's not just intelligent, it's empathically aware. It can sense our emotional states, our intentions. And right now, it's experiencing something I've never seen in military-grade conditioning before. What do you mean? Gratitude. Pure, overwhelming gratitude. Whatever neural conditioning the Ketherans put it through, they couldn't eliminate its capacity for emotional connection. This creature knows we're risking our lives for it, and it's moved by that. Quote, the war beast suddenly began to vocalize, a low, harmonious sound that resonated through the crater. The tone was unmistakably mournful, but there were undertones of something else. Hope. Ensign Park's voice came through the comm with excitement. Captain, I'm picking up response signals. There are other war beasts out there, still alive, still mobile. The singing seems to be some kind of communication. Long-range acoustic communication through the planet's crust. Vasquez paused in her work as more voices joined the first, creating a complex harmony that seemed to come from every direction. It's calling to them. It's telling them what we're doing here. The response was immediate and startling. From 3 different directions, massive shapes began moving through the wreckage toward their position. These war beasts were wounded but mobile, and they were approaching with obvious purpose. Rodriguez tensed, checking his weapon systems. Captain, we've got at least 6 combat-capable war beasts converging on our position. This could be a trap. But as the creatures emerged from the debris field, their behavior defied all military logic. Instead of forming attack formations, they arranged themselves in a defensive circle around the crater. Each war beast positioned itself to guard a different approach vector, and then they began to sing together in a complex harmony that made the very air vibrate. They're protecting us, Chen realized. They're forming a defensive perimeter around their wounded companion and the humans trying to save it. Dr. Vasquez felt tears streaming down her face as she worked to complete the stasis procedure. In all her years of xenobiology study, she had never witnessed anything like this. These creatures, bred for warfare and conditioned for loyalty to their creators, had chosen to risk their lives protecting the people, trying to save one of their own. "Stasis pod is ready," she announced. "But I need the creature to remain conscious for the initial neural mapping. This is going to hurt significantly." The warbeast's response was to extend all of its functional limbs, pressing them against the ground in what was clearly a bracing position. Its 6 eyes remained fixed on Vasquez, communicating trust and determination. The stasis initiation process was brutal to witness. The creature's entire nervous system had to be gradually shut down while keeping essential brain functions active. Each step caused visible pain, but the warbeast never flinched, never pulled away from the human doctor's touch. Around them, the other warbeasts maintained their protective formation, their songs growing more complex as Vorthak's scout ships appeared on the horizon. Long-range sensors showed the scouts were still 2 hours away, but they were definitely heading toward the source of the acoustic signals. "Doctor, whatever you're going to do it now," Chen urged. "We're about to have company." Vasquez activated the final sequence, and the warbeast's massive body began to slow and still as its metabolic processes entered deep hibernation. The crystalline stasis field formed around it, creating a protective cocoon that would preserve its life until proper medical facilities could be reached. But as the stasis field stabilized, something unexpected happened. The creature's cybernetic implants began broadcasting a signal that Ensign Park immediately recognized. "Captain, it's transmitting a distress beacon on Kitharon military frequencies. It's calling for immediate medical evacuation. Not just recovery. The signal includes human medical certification codes." Chen felt a chill of realization. It's telling its own people that humans saved its life. It's vouching for us. The warbeast had done something unprecedented in galactic military history. It had officially recommended human medical personnel to its own command structure. In the rigid hierarchy of Kitharan society, such an endorsement from a warbeast carried enormous weight. Rodriguez's scanners suddenly lit up with new contacts. "Captain, I'm reading massive hyperspace signatures. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. This is either very good news or very bad news." The ships that appeared were neither Vorthak nor Kitharan, but something else entirely. Coalition medical vessels, responding to the human distress signal Chen had sent hours earlier. But these weren't just human ships. The medical fleet included vessels from a dozen different species, all coming to assist in the evacuation. "This is Admiral Thorne of the Coalition Medical Command," came a voice over the communication system. "Captain Chen, we received your transmission regarding battlefield medical assistance. We're here to provide support." Chen felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Admiral, we have a critically injured Kitharan warbeast in stasis and 6 mobile warbeasts providing defensive support. The situation is complicated." "Understood, Captain. We're prepared for complex interspecies medical scenarios. Our xenobiology teams include specialists in Kitharan biomechanical systems." As the Coalition medical ships descended toward the planet's surface, the warbeasts around the crater began to stand down from their defensive positions. But they didn't retreat. Instead, they formed an honor guard, a formal military formation used in Kitharan culture to show respect for distinguished allies. Dr. Vasquez stood beside the stasis pod, watching as human, Altarian, and Centaurian medical teams worked together to stabilize the creature for transport. Around them, warbeasts that had been bred to destroy these very species stood as silent witnesses to something unprecedented in galactic history. The wounded warbeast would survive. More than that, it would recover as a living symbol of what was possible when different species chose compassion over conflict. The humans had refused to walk away. And in doing so, they had created a moment that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. But this was only the beginning of something much larger than any of them could have imagined. 6 months later, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Zirion 7 Memorial Medical Station, watching as the most unlikely partnership in galactic history continued to unfold. Through the massive transparasteel windows, she could see human doctors working alongside Kitharan bioengineers to develop revolutionary new medical techniques that combined the best of both species' approaches to healing. The war beast they had saved, now known as Thyrax 7 Prime, had not only made a complete recovery, but had become something unprecedented in Kitharon society. A diplomatic liaison. Its survival and subsequent testimony about human medical intervention had caused a complete re-evaluation of humanity's role in galactic affairs. Captain Chen, came a deep, resonant voice behind her. Chen turned to see Thyrax approaching, its massive frame moving with surprising grace through the station's corridors. The creature's cybernetic enhancements had been fully repaired and upgraded, but it had requested that certain human-designed modifications be incorporated into its systems as well. Thyrax, you don't need to use formal titles anymore, Chen smiled. We've been through too much together for that. The war beast's response came through a sophisticated translation device that converted its complex vocalizations into human speech patterns. But Chen had learned to read its body language and emotional expressions, making the translator often unnecessary. Formal acknowledgement is important to my people, Sarah Chen. It helps them understand the significance of what happened here. Thyrax's 6 eyes focused on the activity below. Today marks the completion of the first joint human Kitharan medical research program. The healing techniques developed here will save countless lives across both our species. Chen nodded, remembering the long journey that had brought them to this point. The aftermath of Thyrax's rescue had been far more complex than anyone had anticipated. The Kitharan High Command had initially been skeptical of their war beast's reports about human medical capabilities. It had taken months of careful diplomatic work and dozens of joint medical missions before trust could be established. Dr. Vasquez tells me the new biomechanical healing accelerators are showing remarkable results, Chen observed. Combining human surgical techniques with Kitharan regenerative technology has cut recovery times by 70%. More than that, Thyrax replied. It has changed how my people view the concept of medicine itself. Before our encounter with humans, healing was seen as a utilitarian necessity. You have taught us that the act of healing can be an expression of something greater. The transformation in Kitharan society had been profound and unexpected. War beasts who had been conditioned for loyalty through pain and dominance were now being raised with concepts of empathy and voluntary service. The change had not been without resistance, but Thyrax's influence and testimony had proven decisive. Lieutenant Morrison, now promoted to commander and serving as the station's executive officer, approached with a data pad. Captain, we've just received confirmation from the Coalition Medical Council. The Zirion 7 protocols have been officially adopted as standard practice for all member species. Chen accepted the data pad, reviewing the historic document. The Zirion 7 protocols establish the principle that all sentient beings, regardless of species, allegiance, or circumstances, were entitled to emergency medical care from coalition forces. It was a radical departure from traditional military doctrine, but it had gained support from an unexpected coalition of species who had witnessed the results of human medical diplomacy. There's more, Morrison continued. The Vorthak have requested preliminary negotiations for a ceasefire agreement. They've specifically asked for human mediators, citing our reputation for treating all species fairly. This was perhaps the most surprising development of all. The Vorthak, who had seemed committed to endless warfare, were now showing interest in diplomatic solutions. Intelligence reports suggested that news of human medical teams treating wounded Vorthak prisoners with the same care as coalition forces had begun to shift public opinion within Vorthak territory. Thyrax's massive head turned toward Morrison. The Vorthak are a proud species who have never known mercy from their enemies. Your people's actions have introduced a concept they did not know existed. It has confused them in the best possible way. Dr. Vasquez emerged from one of the medical labs, her face bright with excitement. She had been working with a team of Kitharan bioengineers on projects that pushed the boundaries of what medicine could accomplish. Her hair was now streaked with premature gray from the stress of pioneering interspecies medical techniques, but her enthusiasm had never wavered. Sarah, Thyrax, you need to see this, she called out. We've just completed the first successful neural bridge implant between a human patient and a Kitharan biomechanical system. The patient was a coalition pilot who lost both legs in a Vorthak attack. The new prosthetics aren't just functional. They're actually superior to original human limbs in strength and sensory feedback. The implications were staggering. If human and Kitharan technologies could be safely integrated, it opened possibilities for enhancement and healing that neither species could achieve alone. More importantly, it represented a level of trust and cooperation that would have been unimaginable just months earlier. Chen followed Dr. Vasquez to the medical lab, where a human patient was taking his first steps on new legs that gleamed with the distinctive biomechanical design of Kitharan engineering. The integration was seamless, and the patient's face showed wonder as he experienced sensory feedback more acute than his original biological systems had provided. The neural interface uses a modified version of the empathic resonance technology found in Warbeast cybernetics, Dr. Vasquez explained. It allows for intuitive control and emotional feedback from the prosthetic systems. The patient doesn't just control the new limbs, he feels them as completely natural parts of his body. Thyrak observed the demonstration with obvious pride. This technology was originally developed to enhance the bond between war beasts and their handlers. To see it used for healing instead of warfare, it gives new meaning to everything my people have created. As they watched, more patients entered the lab. These were beings from across the galaxy. Altarians with radiation poisoning from their industrial worlds, Centaurians suffering from genetic disorders, even a few Vorthak prisoners of war who had volunteered for experimental treatments. All were being treated with the same care and cutting-edge medical technology. Captain, Ensign Park's voice came through the communication system. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Kitharan High Command. They're requesting permission to establish a permanent medical liaison office on the station. Chen exchanged glances with Thyrak. A permanent Kitharan presence would represent an unprecedented level of cooperation between their species. It would also mean that the lessons learned here could be shared throughout Kitharan space, potentially transforming their entire approach to medicine and healing. Inform the High Command that we would be honored to host a permanent liaison office, Chen responded. And ask if they would be interested in establishing exchange programs for medical personnel. Thyrak's expression, as much as Chen had learned to read it, showed something like joy. My people have agreed to your request before you made it. 3 war beasts have volunteered to undergo conversion training to become medical assistant specialists. They wish to learn human techniques for trauma care and emergency medicine. The idea of war beasts being retrained as medical personnel would have been laughable 6 months ago. Now it represented the natural evolution of everything they had started in that crater on Zirion 7. Beings designed for destruction, choosing to become healers, was perhaps the most powerful symbol of transformation possible. Sergeant Rodriguez, now serving as the station's security chief, approached with a concerned expression. Captain, we've got an interesting situation developing. A Vorthak medical ship has appeared at the edge of the system. They're requesting permission to dock and observe our medical procedures. Chen felt a familiar tightness in her chest. Every new development brought new challenges, new opportunities for either progress or catastrophic misunderstanding. The Vorthak had never shown interest in medical cooperation before. What's their stated purpose? She asked. They claim to have wounded personnel aboard who need specialized care that only our joint human Kitharan techniques can provide. Rodriguez replied. But they're also requesting permission to send observers to study our methods. Thyrak's 6 eyes focused intently on Chen. This is a test, Sarah Chen. The Vorthak leadership wants to see if the mercy you showed to one dying war beast extends to their people as well. Your answer will determine whether this conflict continues or begins to transform into something else. Chen looked around at the medical station that had grown from their impulsive act of compassion. Human and Kitharan personnel worked side by side, developing treatments that were saving lives across the galaxy. Patients from a dozen species recovered in the same wards, sharing stories and forming friendships that transcended ancient prejudices. Grant them permission to dock, she decided. Full medical cooperation. Same as any other patient. And yes, they can observe our procedures. Transparency builds trust. As the orders were transmitted, Chen felt the weight of history settling around them. What had started as a simple refusal to let one creature die alone had become something much larger. They were witnessing the birth of a new era in galactic civilization, one where the choice to show mercy could reshape entire species and end conflicts that had raged for centuries. Dr. Vasquez joined them at the observation window as the Vorthak medical ship approached the station. "You know," she said quietly, "6 months ago, we saved one life. Today, we might be saving thousands more just by showing those same principles still apply." Thyrak's deep voice carried a note of reverence as it spoke. In Kitharan culture, there is a concept called Thyrak Neth, the moment when a single act of unexpected kindness changes the trajectory of history. My people believe such moments are rare gifts that must be recognized and honored. Chen smiled, watching as the former enemies prepared to dock at a station built on the principles of universal medical care. "Then, let's make sure we're worthy of the gift we've been given." As the Vorthok ship settled into its berth, Chen knew that they stood at another crossroads. Every choice they made now would echo across the galaxy for generations, but for once, she felt confident that they would choose correctly. After all, they had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to walk away from someone who needs help, no matter who they are or what they represent. The war beast they had saved had become a bridge between species. The medical techniques they had developed together were healing wounds both physical and cultural, and the principles they had demonstrated were spreading throughout galactic civilization like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. In the end, Chen reflected, they had proved something that many species had forgotten, that compassion was not a weakness to be abandoned in the face of conflict, but the greatest strength any civilization could possess. And sometimes, that strength could change everything.